This is the story of the murder of Daryl Thomas, a man whose life was tragically cut short. It is a tale of deception, greed, and the lengths people will go to for a chance at a new beginning. Daryl Thomas was the kind of man who lived his life by the clock. Every day, he would leave his job at AutoZone right at 6:12 p.m., the same time he had clocked out on that fateful evening of September 3rd, 2023. His colleagues would wave goodbye as he walked toward the silver 2016 Honda Accord, parked just a few steps away. It was a routine he had followed for years, a testament to his punctuality and reliability. But that evening, something went terribly wrong. Lauren Thomas, Daryl's wife, made a 911 call that would set the wheels of investigation in motion. Her voice, though laced with concern, was surprisingly calm. It was almost as if she had rehearsed her words, her tone measured and controlled. "Something's wrong," she said, her voice steady. Daryl never misses a beat. He should have been home hours ago. But there was something in her delivery that struck the officers as odd. It was a kind of calm that seemed almost unnatural, a stark departure from the panic one would expect from a wife whose husband had vanished into thin air. We'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let us know how far our story has reached. Your support means the world to us. As the police began their investigation, Lauren took to social media, posting a desperate plea for help on Facebook. Her words were heartfelt, her desperation palpable. She shared a recent photo of Daryl, his smile warm and inviting, and asked anyone with information to come forward. The post was shared widely, a digital cry for help that echoed through the community. But behind the scenes, detectives were already piecing together a different picture. They noted the inconsistencies in Lauren's story. The way her account of the day's events seemed to shift with each telling. She claimed to have last spoken to Daryl at 2:30 p.m., but later corrected herself to 3:15 p.m. It was a small detail, but one that raised eyebrows among the seasoned investigators. Why would she get such a crucial detail wrong? And why did her demeanor seem so rehearsed? As the hours turned into days, the urgency to find Daryl grew. His phone went straight to voicemail. His car was nowhere to be found, and his paycheck remained uncollected. It was out of character for a man known for his punctuality and dedication. Family and friends described Daryl as a loving husband and father, a man who would never willingly disappear. But as the investigation deepened, it became clear that there was more to this story than met the eye. The detectives, Sean Alvarez and Tanya Bridges, were no strangers to missing persons cases. They had seen their fair share of heartbreak and mystery, but something about this case gnawed at them. The pieces just didn't fit. Daryl's last known movements were clear. He had left work at 6:12 p.m., walked his car, and then nothing. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The community rallied around the search for Daryl, their concern turning into a collective effort to bring him home. But as the days turned into weeks, the hope of finding him alive began to fade. The investigation took a darker turn as detectives uncovered a trail of deception and hidden motives. It was a story that would unravel layer by layer, revealing secrets that some would do anything to keep buried. Detectives Sean Alvarez and Tanya Bridges were no strangers to the complexities of human nature. They had seen the best and worst of what people were capable of, and as they were assigned to the case of Daryl Thomas, they knew they were stepping into a puzzle that would test their skills. The initial details were sparse and unsettling. Daryl, a man known for his punctuality and dedication, had vanished without a trace. His wife, Lauren, had reported him missing, but her actions raised more questions than answers. Lauren hadn't made any attempts to contact Daryl's co-workers, a move that seemed odd given the urgency of the situation. She also hadn't tried to trace Daryl's phone, a tool that could have provided crucial information about his whereabouts. It was as if she was avoiding the very steps that could lead to finding him. The police, however, were quick to notice these discrepancies. They discovered that Daryl's phone was turned off, a deliberate act that suggested he didn't want to be found. His car was missing, and his paycheck remained unclaimed, details that painted a picture of a man who had simply disappeared. But as the detectives continued with the investigation, they began to uncover a story that was far more intricate than they had initially imagined. Surveillance footage from businesses along Campton Road revealed a silver Honda Accord, Daryl's car. turning into an alleyway near Walker's auto repair at 6:31 p.m. on the night he disappeared. The timing was precise, and the image, though grainy, was unmistakable. It was a clue that suggested Daryl had been in the area. But where did he go from there? The detectives began to piece together a timeline. Daryl had left work at 6:12 p.m., a fact confirmed by employee logs. He had been seen walking toward his parked car, but after that, the trail went cold. The alleyway where his car was last seen led to a cluster of small auto repair businesses, including Walker's Auto Repair, owned by Marcus Reed. Reed, a man with a limited presence in the community, became a person of interest. The detectives interviewed neighbors and reviewed more surveillance footage. One neighbor, Dolores Whitaker, a retired school teacher, recalled hearing loud noises and shouting between two men on the evening of Daryl's disappearance. She described the sounds as unusual for the typically quiet neighborhood. It sounded like two men arguing, she said in her statement. Then it went quiet. Too quiet. Her account added a chilling layer to the mystery. The detectives also discovered that Lauren's behavior was inconsistent. Her detailed account of minor events contrasted sharply with her vagueness regarding the critical time frame between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. on the night Daryl disappeared. Her recollection of the day's events shifted between interviews, raising suspicions about her involvement. As the investigation continued, the detectives uncovered more evidence that pointed to a premeditated act. Phone records revealed that Lauren had communicated with Marcus multiple times on the day Daryl went missing. Text message logs indicated that Lauren had asked Daryl to stop by Marcus's garage under the pretense of helping with a surprise she had organized. It was a ruse that seemed to have been orchestrated to lure Daryl to a specific location.
The investigation took a pivotal turn when detectives reviewed surveillance footage from a nearby business. There, captured in the grainy video, was Daryl Thomas's silver Honda Accord turning into the alleyway behind Walker's Auto Repair at precisely 6:31 p.m. The image was brief but unmistakable, a fleeting glimpse that would change the course of the investigation. It was a key clue, a breadcrumb leading detectives to a place they might not have otherwise considered. Walker's Auto Repair was owned by Marcus Reed, a 39-year-old mechanic who kept to himself. He was a man of few words, his presence in the community almost ghost-like. He had no serious criminal record, but his quiet demeanor and limited connections raised suspicions. When detectives first interviewed him, Reed's answers were vague and evasive. He claimed to have left the shop by 6 p.m. on the night Daryl disappeared, but under further questioning, he revised his statement, saying he had stayed late to complete paperwork. He couldn't provide a clear timeline or any corroborating witnesses for his whereabouts that evening. It was as if he was trying to cover his tracks. But why? Then, a crucial witness stepped forward. Dolores Whitaker, a 73-year-old retired schoolteacher who lived in an apartment across from the garage, recalled hearing loud noises on the evening of Daryl's disappearance. Around 7 p.m., she heard shouting between two men, followed by a loud bang. The sounds were jarring in the typically quiet neighborhood. It sounded like two men arguing, she said in her statement. Then it went quiet. Too quiet. Whitaker also noted that shortly after the noises, she saw a dark-colored SUV parked briefly outside the garage before speeding away. The vehicle was difficult to describe due to poor lighting, but its presence added another layer to the mystery. Armed with the surveillance footage, Reed's inconsistent statements, and Whitaker's testimony, detectives sought and obtained a search warrant for Walker's Auto Repair. The warrant was approved by Fulton County Magistrate Court, and the stage was set for a critical moment in the investigation. Detectives planned to execute the warrant early in the morning to ensure Reed's presence and minimize the risk of evidence tampering. The South Fulton Police Department's crime scene unit was assigned to assist, their expertise crucial in preserving the integrity of the scene. On the morning of September 6th, the air was thick with anticipation as police officers arrived at Walker's Auto Repair. The search warrant in hand, they moved with a sense of urgency, knowing that every minute counted. The garage, usually a place of routine repairs and maintenance, now felt like the scene of a chilling mystery. As officers navigated through the clutter of broken-down vehicles and scattered tools, their focus was laser-sharp. They were searching for answers, for clues that could shed light on the disappearance of Daryl Thomas. The initial walkthrough of the garage revealed a space that was disorganized but not unusual for a mechanic's shop. Tools were scattered throughout, and several vehicles were in various states of repair. But it was in the rear corner of the shop where officers made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the community. There, chained and locked, was a large industrial-grade chest freezer. The lock appeared newer than the surrounding equipment, a detail that did not escape the officers' notice. When asked about the freezer, Marcus Reed, the owner of the garage, claimed it had been broken for months and was used for storage. His voice was steady, but there was an underlying tension that was hard to miss. Given the suspicious circumstances, officers decided to cut the chain. As the lock fell away, a sense of foreboding settled over the scene. The moment the freezer was opened, a strong odor of decomposition filled the room. Inside, officers found a rolled tarp secured with duct tape and heavy-duty black contractor bags. The tarp was carefully removed, revealing the partially frozen body of Daryl Thomas, curled into a fetal position. It was a sight that no one could have prepared for, a grim confirmation of their worst fears. Daryl hadn't run away, and he hadn't had an accident. He had been murdered, and frozen like evidence. The discovery was a pivotal moment in the investigation. It was a stark reminder of the cold, calculated nature of the crime. Daryl's body was carefully wrapped, an attempt to conceal the crime and delay its discovery. The Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office was immediately contacted to take custody of the body. An autopsy would later reveal that Daryl had suffered blunt force trauma to the back of the head, along with evidence of manual strangulation. His wallet, still in his pocket, contained identification and a small amount of cash, but his phone and car keys were missing. Forensic technicians began processing the garage, collecting physical evidence that would be crucial in piecing together the events of that fateful evening. Fingerprint analysis on the freezer handle revealed two distinct sets of prints, one belonging to Marcus Reed and another to Lauren Thomas, Daryl's wife. It was a revelation that suggested a level of involvement that went far beyond what anyone had initially suspected. As the investigation continued, detectives confronted Marcus Reed with the forensic findings. Reed provided limited responses, citing his right to counsel. His initial cooperation quickly turned into silence, a tactic that only heightened the suspicions of the investigators. Meanwhile, detectives notified Lauren Thomas of the discovery. Her initial reaction was one of visible shock, but as the interviews progressed, her demeanor changed. She became increasingly evasive, her statements inconsistent with her earlier accounts. Phone records revealed that Lauren had communicated with Marcus multiple times on the day Daryl went missing. Text message logs indicated that Lauren had asked Daryl to stop by Marcus's garage under the pretense of helping with a surprise she had organized. It was a ruse that seemed to have been orchestrated to lure Daryl to a specific location, a detail that would become a crucial part of the prosecution's case. The discovery of Daryl's body in the freezer was a turning point in the investigation. It shifted the focus from a missing persons case to a murder investigation, and it brought the community face to face with a crime that was both shocking and deeply unsettling. As the evidence continued to mount, it became clear that this was not a random act of violence but a premeditated murder, orchestrated by individuals who had once been close to the victim. The investigation would continue to unfold, revealing more layers of deception and hidden motives. But the discovery of Daryl's body in the freezer was the moment that changed everything. It was a chilling reminder of the lengths to which some people will go to achieve their goals, and it set the stage for a legal battle that would seek justice for Daryl Thomas and his family. As the investigation continued to peel into the lives of the people involved, a shocking revelation came to light. Lauren Thomas, Daryl's wife, confessed to having an affair with Marcus Reed, the mechanic. This illicit relationship had been ongoing since January 2023, a secret liaison that had been hidden in the shadows until now. The affair was not just a fleeting romance. It was a partnership with a dark and dangerous undercurrent. Text messages between Lauren and Marcus painted a vivid picture of their dissatisfaction with their current lives. The messages were filled with frustration and resentment, particularly towards Daryl. Financial disputes were a common theme, with Lauren expressing her desire for a life free from what she perceived as Daryl's controlling nature. The words on the screen were more than just complaints. They were a roadmap of a plan that had been brewing for months. They weren't just cheating, they were planning a life. And Daryl was in the way, the narrator explains, the weight of the revelation hanging heavy in the air. The evidence suggested that the murder was not a crime of passion but a calculated act, a means to an end. Daryl, the loving husband and father, had become an obstacle to the life Lauren and Marcus wanted to build together. The plan was set in motion on the evening of September 3rd. Lauren lured Daryl to the garage under the pretense of a surprise, a ruse that he unsuspectingly fell for. When he arrived at Walker's Auto Repair, he was met not with a celebration but with a brutal attack. Marcus, acting on the plan they had devised, struck Daryl with blunt force trauma to the back of the head, a violent blow that was meant to incapacitate him. But it wasn't enough. They wanted to ensure Daryl would never stand in their way again. So, Marcus proceeded to strangle him, his hands tightening around Daryl's neck until the life was drained from his body. The crime was committed in a garage filled with the tools of Marcus's trade, but on that night, those tools were overshadowed by the cold, calculated violence of a premeditated murder. The body was then wrapped in a tarp and contractor bags, a methodical effort to conceal the evidence and delay discovery. The freezer, a place meant to preserve, became the final resting place for Daryl's lifeless form. As the investigation continued, the evidence mounted against Lauren and Marcus. Phone records, text messages, and forensic evidence all pointed to their guilt. The once-loved husband and father had become a casualty in a twisted game of deception and desire. The community, shocked by the revelation, struggled to come to terms with the dark underbelly of a seemingly ordinary life. The case of Daryl Thomas's murder was a stark reminder that sometimes, the people we trust the most can harbor the darkest secrets. It was a story of betrayal, greed, and the lengths to which some will go to achieve their desires. As the investigation drew to a close and the trial began, the truth was laid bare for all to see. The evidence was undeniable, the motives clear, and the consequences severe. The wheels of justice turned swiftly, and soon both Marcus Reed and Lauren Thomas found themselves in the cold, unyielding grip of the law. The arrests were made, and the charges were grave. Marcus faced the harshest accusation of all, first-degree murder, a crime that carried with it the weight of a life taken. Lauren, on the other hand, was charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice, her role in the heinous act laid bare for all to see. The trial began in February 2024 at the Fulton County Superior Court, a place where the truth would be scrutinized and justice would be served. The courtroom was a hive of activity, filled with a hum of anticipation and the quiet rustle of papers. The prosecution, armed with a mountain of evidence, set about building an ironclad case against the accused. Digital records, those silent witnesses that never lie, were presented to the jury. Phone logs, text messages, and internet searches painted a damning picture of premeditation and deceit. Forensic evidence, the fingerprints and DNA that tied the accused to the crime scene, was meticulously laid out. And then there were the eyewitnesses, the voices of those who had seen and heard things that fateful night, their testimonies adding a human element to the clinical presentation of facts. The prosecution wove a narrative of betrayal and greed, a story of how a man's life was taken in the pursuit of a new beginning. They painted a picture of a couple driven by desire and financial motives, willing to go to any lengths to achieve their goals. The evidence was compelling, the arguments persuasive, and the jury listened with rapt attention. But the defense was not without its strategies. They argued that Marcus had acted alone, that he was a man manipulated by Lauren's influence, a pawn in a game she had orchestrated. They painted Marcus as a victim of circumstance, a man who had been led astray by a woman with a hidden agenda. Lauren's attorneys claimed she was unaware of Marcus's intent to cause harm, that she was a bystander caught in the crossfire of a crime she had never intended to be a part of. The courtroom drama played out over weeks, with each side presenting their case with fervor and determination. The jury, tasked with the immense responsibility of determining the fate of the accused, listened intently to every word, every piece of evidence, and every argument. The tension was palpable, the stakes higher than ever. In the end, the weight of the evidence proved too much for the defense to overcome. The jury, after hours of deliberation, returned with their verdict. Marcus Reed was found guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. The sentence was severe, 40 years in state prison without the possibility of parole. Lauren Thomas was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and being an accomplice to homicide. She received a sentence of 25 years in prison without eligibility for early release. The courtroom fell silent as the verdict was read, the gravity of the moment settling over everyone present. The prosecution, their hard work and dedication rewarded, stood with a sense of vindication. The defense, their arguments ultimately unconvincing, faced the reality of their clients' fates. And the family of Daryl Thomas, Their grief, compounded by the revelation of betrayal, found a measure of solace in the knowledge that justice had been served. The case of Daryl Thomas's murder was a stark reminder of the complexities of human nature, the lengths to which some will go to achieve their desires, and the importance of uncovering the truth, no matter how deeply it is buried. As the sentences were handed down, the family of Daryl Thomas was given the opportunity to speak. Their words were filled with emotion, a raw and unfiltered expression of the pain and loss they had endured. Each statement was a testament to the impact of the crime, a reminder that the consequences of such actions ripple out far beyond the immediate victims. The family's words were a poignant reminder of the human cost of violence, a cost that could never be fully repaid. Justice was served, but the scars left behind were permanent, the weight of the words hanging in the air. The courtroom was a place where the scales of justice had been balanced, but the impact of the crime would linger, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of trust. The sentences were a closure of sorts, but they could never truly heal the wounds that had been inflicted. The family of Daryl Thomas would carry the memory of their loved one with them, a bittersweet reminder of the life that had been taken too soon. As the trial came to a close, the community was left to grapple with the revelations that had been uncovered. The case had shaken them to their core, a stark reminder of the darkness that could exist in even the most seemingly ordinary lives. But in the end, it was a story of justice, a story of the relentless pursuit of truth, and the hope that in the face of such tragedy, some measure of peace could be found.